What's going on, Paw fans? Welcome back to another video on my channel, and today we're going to be previewing round 10 Port Adelaide versus the Western Bulldogs for Monday Night Footy at the Adelaide Oval. It's going to be a very interesting game, especially with how the two teams are currently going at the moment, especially the Dogs coming off a pretty harsh loss against the Tigers, and Port Adelaide absolutely smashing Melbourne on Thursday night. A short turnaround for both teams is what's going to be the tricky thing with selection as well. So let's get into it and preview this week's game. It's weird, eh? Monday Night Footy, such a short turnaround from Thursday Night Footy after taking on the D's, and I think Port Adelaide are going to be pretty well placed going into this one, especially with a bit of momentum and a bit of form off the back of a loss to St Kilda just only a week ago. So it's going to be one of those games where I think, the continuation of football in the body and just not really having any time to sit back and relax is going to help teams like Port, who do have such a young up-and-coming side. So I think the same with the Dogs as well. They've got a few very handy players that we will have to deal with on the night. And a short turnaround. We don't know exactly what Dogs are going to turn up on the night because they seem to be pretty inconsistent at the moment. They've had, they beat the Gold Coast Suns only a week before, but then obviously losing to the Tigers in such a smashing form. I thought, the Dogs have been one of those sides where, they look like they're going to be a top 8 team. They're going to keep progressing, and then they'll throw out a performance like that. To be honest, I do think we're going to get the good Western Bulldogs Monday night. I can just see they're hyping that type of game up. It's going to be one of those games where they have to win or they have to put in a performance to, because it's such a close season, no game is not important. And for the Dogs, it's going to be one of those where they have to be at their best. They're going to have to perform. The short turnaround is obviously going to dictate whether both teams drop any players and just rest them for Monday night, because it's, again, another turnaround to next weekend's round 11 games. It's going to be... it's got that vibe about it, that unpredictable vibe where we don't know exactly what's going to turn up and what's going to be in front of us, in front of the 20,000 that are going to be there on Monday night for Adelaide Oval. And it is helping that Port Adelaide do have a home game. Both teams do have to travel from Queensland anyway, so there's no advantage in travel or whatsoever. It's just going to be... It's a home game for Port, but I think, in a sense, we haven't really felt at home this year, which sort of makes it a mutual ground for both sides because of the lack of playing that both Adelaide Oval has had in general, and us not playing there too often this year. So that sort of goes out the window. I don't think we have much of an advantage anymore at the Adelaide Oval. It's just too good to have 20,000 Port fans there, and that probably gives us a little mental edge over the Dogs. Didn't work against St Kilda, but it does give an advantage, and I know the boys will be frothing up the chance to get it back out there, and the crowd itself is just will be loud, won't it? A couple of things I've noticed with the Dogs after the last few games that they've played. They obviously smashed Essendon, they beat Gold Coast, and then losing to Richmond. Team English is the type of player that's been worked around. He's usually that type of player that floats around. He's sort of like Max Gawn. He floats and helps out down back. He'll float up forward. He might kick a goal or two, but he takes a good mark and he helps out the midfielders. He's such an athletic ruckman that I think the way that we can work, the way that he's been worked is, reducing his influence around the ground. One-on-one at a ruck, you can't do much more than just beat your opponent, but if we can, sort of keep him out of the game where he pushes down back and helps out the defenders, or he goes up forward and kicks a cheeky goal, it's that type of player that sort of seems to bother us, and it will help being able to shut his influence down. Didn't help, obviously, with Ryder and Marshall against St Kilda. Gawn's influence on Thursday night was really reduced because of Melbourne's inability to use the footy well and take advantage of Gawn's dominance in the ruck. So with Laddams and possibly Lysette coming back in, I reckon we can go the two ruckmen. Maybe we rest a West off and just play a deep ruck, maybe Laddams or Lysette down forward to help out Charlie, because I know the Dogs do struggle with tall forwards. We saw that against the Tigers. Like Lynch and Rewalt were just running ragged down there, taking contested marks and uncontested marks, and their forward line was just capable of blowing the Dogs' defensive unit apart. So I think we have a similar capacity to do that, and I think what will help as well is, having that, having those dynamic forwards. You also have Ebert, we'll have Georgiadis down there, and if Westhoff does play, he can play up there as well. He did really well against the Demons, so we have a lot of flexibility, and I think the Dogs can struggle with that. The Dogs, they do get Dunkley back, who has been a pretty fierce competitor against Port Adelaide of late, so him coming back from injury does help them a lot. Combining that with Bontempelli, McRae, their midfield is superb. Daniel at half back, and then up forward, Bruce has the opportunity against a smaller forward line. Mackenzie will definitely, I think, come back in. Well, I hope he comes back in, because even though our defence was a really good unit last week against the D's, I think Mackenzie completes that. So Bruce is down there. So if we can negate his influence and try and... Mitch Wallace is the other one, actually. I'd be putting Jonas on him. He's their leading goal kicker for the year, and he seems to be a very versatile and he's a very handy forward. So if we can, restrict his influence, he kicks 2 or 3 goals a game. So to keep him either goalless or minimal impact on the scoreboard will go a long way to doing that. So there is a few matchups that are going to be very curious to watch, because our midfield as well, Wines is back in some decent form, Carl Amon on the wing, Dersma, Boak, Rockcliffe, they're all fierce competitors. Power Pepper might be one to go on Daniel. Just negate his influence as well. We just need a shutdown there out the back run. That's more than anything. Our press is going to be on because of the way they play. The Dogs, they like to go through the corridor as well. So it's just all about taking opportunities too. There's so many factors that, especially against the Dogs, you've got to make the most of. And you saw Richmond, they took their chances on Wednesday night. They kicked the chances that they got, and they were able to really put the pressure on the Dogs early on, and then the Dogs just couldn't keep up. And that's the biggest thing as well, is we did that against the D's, where our early impact was able to really put the pressure on Melbourne, and they couldn't keep up with the way we were moving. So even though they had plenty of inside 50s, they didn't use their inside 50s, but they were really competitive around the contest, but we were just so more efficient, and we're just able to clean up our usage a lot better than what they did. And Georgiadis was kicking goals, Westhoff kicked goals, Rosie was in and about. So I can see a very interesting game on our hands, that's for sure. Selection wise, I don't know. Do we go in unchanged? Do we go in having a few players rested? I know Boak looked a bit sore with his shoulder. Robbie Gray had that massive hit late in the game. We've got Lysette and Mackenzie who could possibly come back in. Do we go down that route of resting players? Rosie, I know as well, is carrying that foot injury, so maybe that might flare up, having a short day break. I know we will be taking the right precautions if people needed to be rested. But I think if we can get through this game, we've got a 6-day break, I think we'll be able to be managed a little bit better moving forward. But I don't know. It's such a hard one to think about, because it is a big game. Because if we win this, we're 2 from 2 so far in the 4-game block in this 2-week period. So we've just got to try and manage who we can without influencing structures and players that are in form, because this is what's going to hold us together. This is what's going to give us an even bigger step moving into the second half of the season. Well, Port fans, let me know what you think about this week's game. What should we do for selection? What are your tips and what are your margins? I'm tipping Port Adelaide by 24 points. I think we're going to be on. I think we're going to switch it on for the Port faithful, and the ones we'll look to most are the Boaks, the Greys, Eberts, you know, the senior caliber to push through this. Jonas, downback's been awesome. Darcy Byrne-Jones, you know, these types of players will once again lift and we'll be able to take this one out. So let me know in the comments below what you're thinking. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new for plenty more Port Adelaide and AFL content. We're on our way to 3,000 subscribers. I think less than 100 to go, so appreciate all the support. Make sure you jump on board. My name is Anthony, and as always, come the pair.